Okay. Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Postcards from a Dying World. My name is Desmond Reddick, the usual host of Dread Media, but I'm your co-host this week. And with me is Grant Wamack. Grant, you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, hey, my name is Grant Wamack. I'm the author of God's Leftovers, Black Gypsies, a few other books, Tarot Reader, Jiu-Jitsu Addict. I do it all. So.
Excellent. And we're
Smooth.
here to talk. It's very smooth. Yeah. We're here to talk about a brand new book coming out. And we have both of the authors. I'm willing to bet you guys could probably figure it out. First up, we have Anthony Trevino. Welcome, Anthony.
Hey, what's going on? Do you mean to introduce myself like Grant did?
Yeah, sure.
Oh,
Yeah, we need a big intro.
Dude, I should have done my WWE intro. You could have played some fucking like shitty new metal.
And in this corner.
Yeah, I'm Anthony Trevino. I am the co-writer of most recently what we're here to talk about. Then I co-wrote another novel with Ryan C. Thomas, and I just kind of do very random film stuff, film critic stuff here and there. I don't know. I wasn't prepared, guys. I haven't done this in a while. I've been living in my own head for too long.
You wrote a novella called King's
I don't want
Space
to talk about that one anymore. That's old.
Hey, I like that
That shit's
novella a lot.
old. That shit's old.
This is bad PR, Anthony. Bad PR.
That's what I'm good at.
Well, if people want to learn more about hissers, I interviewed you on this here show with
That's
Ryan.
right.
So
yeah,
great book, Hissers 3.
And of course, everybody recognizes the voice of the usual host of this podcast, David Agranoff.
Hello. Yes, I'm just here to talk about this here book, Nightmare City. But
Nightmare City.
We'll get into that in a minute. But yeah, if you don't know me, that would be weird. But if you don't, because I'm 96 episodes into this podcast.
Hey man, they might have come to this episode strictly for me, Grant, and Desmond.
That is very true, and for that reason,
Possible.
I am the author of Punk Rock Ghost Story, Boot Boys of the Wolf Reich, Goddamn Killing Machines, and next summer, my next solo novel coming out, The Last Night to Kill Nazis, which Desmond is one of 2 people in the world that's actually read it so far.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
So, for a very short
Lucky
time.
few for a very short time. Yeah.
But he was my first reader. So, and but between now and then, we have another book, the one that had a much longer gestation period, and I'm super happy and proud to talk about. So, yeah.
Well, let's go back to the beginning. Do you want me to host the whole show like this?
Oh yeah.
I'm okay. I'm just doing it naturally at this point. But
that was the idea.
All right. When did you guys meet? I mean, that's when the collaboration started at the very beginning, right?
Oh, this is a very funny story. Do you want to start that, Anthony?
I don't. I'm gonna take a nap. I've heard this so many fucking times.
I haven't heard this. I'm excited.
Go ahead, David.
So we met at Comic-Con, but it wasn't just meeting at Comic-Con. I was invited by author Cody Goodfellow. He said, hey, I'm protesting the Southern Baptist church like psychos for Cthulhu. Do you want to come down and join me? And he had like a megaphone and like a giant fish stapled to his his Cthulhu breakfast hat, right? And he had signs like, what would Cthulhu do? And all this stuff. And he was protesting, like they're the people that go outside of Comic-Con and are like, you're going to hell for dressing like Flash. And
that's
right.
That's one of the 7 deadly sins, by the way. Yeah.
And Cody, if anybody knows, like Cody with a megaphone is just absolutely hilarious.
I can imagine.
So of course I went, and the only other person who was there protesting on behalf of the Lovecraftian gods was this guy Anthony Trevino. And so it's a pretty fun way to start a friendship, but it was protesting for Cthulhu against like Christian psychos. So that
Perfect.
was kind of fun. And so that's where we first met. And this book came from a very specific. We took a trip to AWP in LA, which, if anyone knows, I thought it was going to be something useful for writers, but really the only thing useful that came out of it was the drive to and from.
Right.
With Anthony, and I had for a long time wanted to write like a horror crime saga. And basically on the way back, I said to Anthony, hey, would you want to write this with me? And we started spitballing ideas like on the drive back from LA, basically.
Right.
And Anthony, who's the very, cheery, upbeat, like, part of the partnership, was just like, of course, super gung ho. But what he basically, what was really cool about the partnership is, and what I knew from the beginning, and the main reason why I asked Anthony was because not only because Anthony has a really intense knowledge of the genre, right? And I knew he was a talented writer. And at that point, hadn't really published anything. This was even, I think, before was this before King Space Void?
Yeah, it was before.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And but I knew he was talented, and I had fun arguing movies with Anthony. And because we disagree a lot and argue with each other a lot on movies, I actually thought that would help the partnership, because I thought it would create something that one of the things I like about collaborating is you can end up with something that neither one of you could do on your own, right? So yeah. And so the original idea, and I think the first, we've used this even, pitching it to publishers and stuff, is I think the first thing I said to him was I wanted to see The Wire if Clive Barker was on the writing staff, like a young Clive Barker. And then it kind of morphed into if Clive Barker and Philip K. Dick were on the writing staff.
Right. Right.
But, because this was like way before we started Dickheads, the podcast we've been a part of for the last too many years. But yeah, so that's how this kind of started, at least from my perspective.
Cool. Now, did it start as a TV series? Was that the first idea, Anthony?
Yeah, it initially started as a TV show. So we wrote the pilot, and then we wrote, I can't remember, it was the subsequent 2 episodes after that. So the first 3 episodes, or did we write 4 episodes?
We wrote 4 total.
Yeah. So
but
that
we have
actually,
the first season outlined.
Yeah, so that laid the groundwork for a lot of the novel, even though, to be quite honest, the novel really is only the pilot, and a couple of things switched here and there from later episodes. We never got to do any of my favorite stuff from the TV show.
Yeah, I think both of us think that, and Anthony took lead on, because what we did to write the episodes is we really workshopped the pilot together really intensely.
Right.
And then I kind of took lead on episode 2. Anthony took lead on episode 3, and then I took lead on episode 4. But of course, each draft went back and forth between us a lot. And what Anthony did with episode 3, and unfortunately, and this sounds like a really backhanded way to say, buy lots of books so we have an excuse to write more of this. But it's true. But episode 3 and what Anthony did for episode 3 is mind-bogglingly good. And I hope we get there someday, either as a series of books or as a TV series. And I do
or
think
both.
both. Yeah, please. Like I said, buy lots of copies so we can do that. And but yeah, so we kind of really started it we envisioned it first as a TV series, and certainly if we had more connections and knew how to sell it, we would have stayed put with it under that concept. But once we got to writing it as a novel, I really like how it lives as a novel, because we got to deepen the mythology and really like kind of expand it. So I'm glad we got to write it as a novel too. So which
Very
is just us basically saying, like, you know, we want to make sure we control this story and get to do it. So a really great way to do that is make sure that, you know, that we publish it and do it. And so that was part of the thinking and turning it into a novel. So
Cool. Grant, I should have said this earlier, but jump in if you have a question, please.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how was the actual writing process? Do you guys do chapter by chapter and you pass it back and forth, or how did that go?
Well, it's funny because Anthony and I are very different in our writing styles, because Anthony's more of a pantser and I'm more of an outliner. And because you're working on a collaboration, you really have no choice. Like, even, you know, Stephen King, who notoriously hates outlining, you know, has admitted that when he's worked even with his sons or with Peter Straub, that he had to do some outlining, because if you're going to do a novel together, you're going to have to. And so it's harder for me to remember how we did the screenplays, but with the book,
The screenplays were done. Each of us did the full episode and then sent it to the other one. But the book is
Okay.
chapter by chapter. So Dave would write a chapter, he'd send it to me, I'd read it, I'd revise it, I'd write the next chapter, and I'd send it to him, and then we just kind of pitch back and forth.
yeah, it's kind of like playing tennis. You're kind of hitting it back and forth. And then
I think that's how you worked with Edward Morris too, right?
yeah, it was similar structure. One real difference between writing with Ed and writing with Anthony is that Ed and I are like both very fast writers and like almost competitive about, like, here, I wrote this chapter in 15 nanoseconds, so go. Whereas Anthony, and this is to Anthony's credit, Anthony is very methodical about how he writes. And like, there was no like racing with Anthony. It was like, no, I'm gonna take my fucking time, dude. So like, relax. And so it
Yeah,
was
that's why
good.
you won't see a new novella from me until like next year or 2 years from now or 8 years from now. Who the fuck knows?
Nothing wrong with being a slow writer.
No, there's nothing. And it was good because it slowed us down a little bit in a good way. And there were certainly times where I was like, okay, what's going on with this chapter? And a lot of times, like when it would come through, and this was a fun part of the process of collaborating for me, is that you know, that feeling when you read a new book and you got a writer who really like does something cool that you're not expecting. I got to experience that a lot with Anthony sending me chapters that are even ones that, you know, we outlined together in meetings, and then something really cool would happen on the page. I mean, that happens, I'm sure, the other way too, but a lot of times it was like, you know, it's funny because I'd be like, okay, where's this chapter? And then it'd come through and I'd be like, hell yeah. Okay, that's, you know, and it was good because, like I said, I'm just really, really fast, and I know this, and sometimes I need to slow down, and it's a good thing for me to, or one of the things that really benefited this book and that collaboration was the two differences in our styles and writing that way and kind of coming up with something else. And you know, excuse me, we also had a lot of moments where, especially in talking about the characters, and you know, this book has a lot of unique characters, and there were times too where we would, you know, and some of the characters are based on real people that either one of us knew but the other person didn't know. So a lot of times we had really hilarious conversations about these characters, that things that didn't even end up in the books, but like or the stories, but just like, saying like, nah, dog, he wouldn't do that. This guy wouldn't be this way or that way. And it was really interesting and fun to live in a novel with somebody else, right?
Right.
In this way,
Real shared world.
right. And because of how unique this world was, there was a lot of things, for example, and a lot of it was like, I was really obsessed with, and I know more about Seattle and the setting. I've spent more time there, and I did a lot of like drawing maps of the region and doing these things. And then more, Anthony was really focused on the characters,
Right.
in a way more so than, and whereas like I did more of the same, although we both talked about it a lot, and I had like the pit, the area that a lot of the book takes place in, we had very detailed maps and things that no one but us would see, but
Right.
we knew the geography of it very well.
Right. Cool. Well, I mean, drawing maps is fun. I have one for that novel that you've read and very few others have read about mine, and no one needs to see it because it does look like a 4-year-old drew it, but it really helped me outline, where things were in my project. Right.
Are you talking about your Ghost Kid novel?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to publish that thing.
Kid
dude.
Ghost. Yeah, I gotta
Good.
gotta figure out who to send it to first.
Well, you ever need a blurb for it? I love that thing. It was great. So it needs to be out there.
Perfect.
But
thank you.
yeah, and the maps I think are really, really important. Flesh Trade that I wrote with Ed, that whole city was, or the whole planet was mapped out too. So yeah, I agree with you.
Right. What did you have? Star charts too? Like
a little bit.
Yeah. Wild. Very cool. Well, we should talk about the characters. So, and I mean, I guess also maybe tell people what the book's about.
Yeah. So,
I mean, I guess I won't spoil it, but
right.
Well, I have a question before we do that. I actually have a question for Grant and Desmond.
Sure.
As far as characters go, and as far as dialogue goes, what worked for you guys, and if there was anything that maybe didn't work. Just because for me, it's always important to kind of know like how those characters are interpreted. Because I can sit here all day and like think of the characters in my head, but I'm always curious about like how they look to other people, especially like other people like you guys.
Grant, you go ahead.
All right. Yeah, I felt like the dialogue flowed well. Like the cop, I don't remember everyone's names, so
Nate.
Mind me. Yeah, Nate. There we go. So Nate, I feel like every chapter very consistent. I never was the spell wasn't broken in any of his dialogue. So I thought it was great. What's the girl's name with the body modification?
Trish.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm shit at names too. So I couldn't remember. Yeah. I remember Nate.
Yeah, I feel like she was very well done too. I remember getting caught. I remember I liked their little spicy escapade.
For sure.
Also, the other thing, just me being a person of color, I'm always kind of looking like, how are the Black characters and how are the people of color talking? And I thought it was well done. It wasn't like, I have like a big, what do you call it? It just annoys me when people write people of color like they're from the 90s,
Right.
It's very annoying to me. So I felt like that was very well done too. But yeah, in general, I like the dialogue a lot. That was smooth, it flowed well.
It's
credit to Anthony on a lot of the dialogue. And as far as I know what you're saying, Grant, because I feel that way whenever radical environmentalists are in any movies or anything.
Yeah,
they always are so ridiculous. Like,
because that's totally the same, David. Come on, man.
But it's funny you say that, because I'm like, I don't know, just like a third of the way through reading rereading, but it's in a new volume, the Milestone Compendium. It's like 1,300 pages of comics from DC's Milestone imprint from the 90s.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and it's a majority. This is a stupid way of saying it, but I'm not an English teacher right now, and I'm tired. It's a majority minority creative group, and so it's like comics about Black people and Hispanic people, by Black people and Hispanic people, which is really great. And the comics are really fantastic in most cases, but also you have to remember that it's the same bullshit from any teenage show. It's 40-year-old guys writing dialogue for teenagers in 1993. And it's like, that reference doesn't pan out.
Yeah.
Well, and something that that's kind of important in this part of the discussion is the characters were really important, because if the characters didn't come off as real, we were toast.
Yeah.
In this situation, because the setting, and we can talk about that, is very science fictional in the sense that we envisioned a near future where the American Midwest and parts of the East Coast have been turned into a dust bowl, basically because of climate change. And it's created a refugee situation on the West Coast, specifically the Pacific Northwest. And so it's the Seattle of Nightmare City is very different from Seattle as it stands right now. It's not the same Seattle. And so we kind of envisioned a whole different place. Now, the geography is the same in the sense that, the most of the action takes place in the southern part of Seattle, which is mostly factories now and a lot of Lockheed Martin and stuff like that. So it was my idea that if you were going to build like a refugee contained like ghetto space, you're going to do it in this part of Seattle,
Right.
And so it created a natural division in the story between the techies that live north of downtown and downtown in the north, and the people in the south. And that created, the template for the commentary that we wanted to do about systematic racism. Now, Anthony and I never said like, hey, let's do commentary about systematic racism. We just decided we just started building this story, and that kind of came out of it.
Right.
It wasn't intentional. There's plenty of, I guess you would say, message in there, but not, we weren't being, this wasn't an idea that we were like, let's get in our soapbox and point fingers at anyone. It was just kind of naturally flowed out of how we see the world and how the story kind of came about. So right. In that sense, I guess I gave a little bit of that, but the story is Nate Washington is a disgraced FBI agent who has used to work undercover in this neighborhood, grew up in this area, and is kind of on the outs. And right around the beginning of the novel, there's a series of kidnappings and of children, and thus begins a mystery. And there's also a cult who harvest nightmares for reasons. They believe for spiritual reasons that they need the nightmares of children, which is why they're kidnapping these children. Of course, Nate, that's part of the mystery that Nate's trying to discover, and thus gives us kind of the metaphysical, kind of Clive Barker-y type of dark fantasy setup mixed with crime. And that's kind of what we were going for with Nightmare City. But then we get to do all the kind of ground level characters, right, which were really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it works pretty naturally, and like Grant said, the dialogue is fantastic, and it flows, and it just works. And it is sort of this near future thing with climate refugees in Seattle and genetic modification, and like a boogeyman kidnapping children, and just sort of smashes it all together, and it works seamlessly.
Well, and the idea there is that you have a whole world that you could build out, because the original idea was a TV series, right?
Right.
So the original idea is that you could do Monster of the Week episodes, and you could do mythology episodes, kind of like how the X-Files did. And you have this setting where you can do all kinds. Well, the novel has a contained story with Nate and all those things, but what we're doing is setting up that you could have literally thousands of stories set in Nightmare City, like with more science fictional stories, more horror stories, more of those kinds of things. And then with all the different characters, you could eventually explore different things. And keep in mind, like the body modification, for example, is something that we didn't really we did eventually in the series kind of get into that, but like the people who are genetically engineering themselves to be more animal-like and things like that was an outgrowth of the novel, more so. We originally kind of saw more as that people would have tech modifications, like they'd have internal like technology, and Trish was kind of a character that just like, I don't even remember which one of us did it, but somebody was just like, oh, she has tiger stripes. And then the next thing you know, we're building all this mythology about like people like genetically engineering themselves to be more like different animals and things like that. And that was completely not planned. And
oh, really?
Yeah, it kind of came out of it. I mean, we built more of it as it was going, but I'm not sure which one of us like just kind of wrote that in, but
it was you.
Okay.
I remember this.
Guilty.
Yeah, it was you.
Okay.
It was you. And then I decided if we were going to do that, then we might as well punch it up. And, because I don't mind stuff that's like vague in background, but when I watch stuff or I read stuff, one of my biggest complaints is like, I like this, but if they had just kind of jacked it up to 11, it would feel more impactful. Right.
Right.
So to me, it just made the more sense to kind of take it to the edge of being almost cartoonish, but not quite getting there. With like the body mod stuff being kind of relating more to like gene splicing with animal DNA.
Yeah.
Right.
And one of my favorite moments in the novel is when Trish goes to this like super tech club where like all the music is internal. Like, so like the club is completely silent except for the sounds of the people dancing, but they hear it inside their heads. And like, there's all kinds of weird shit going on with the tech in this club. And it has nothing to do with the story. Well, it kind of moves the story forward, but like, it's one of my favorite settings in the book. So
yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
And right around the corner, right?
Yeah.
And there's already the clubs with the headphones or whatever, right?
Right.
So that's like a natural expansion from that. And yeah, I mean, sometimes you'll watch a show or a movie or read a book and be like, God damn, man, like I really love this world that they've created, but I don't really like the story. And that's not the case here. It's a really cool world with a shitload of like a myriad. I'll be a little classier. A myriad of story ideas that you could write there, and this one is great, but it's also setting up a great world. So you got both there.
Right. Thank you. I appreciate that, Des. And obviously we believe that there's a lot more potential for growth and expansion of the story, but we worked on this for 4 years. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think I can speak for Anthony in the sense that we're really proud of. I rarely try to speak for Anthony, but I rarely do. But I am.
Anthony, is that true?
I'm very.
I mean, you're
proud.
on Facebook. You see what he posts. You know that's a lie. So, come on, man.
Yeah, I am very proud of this book, and I think, and one of the things I'm really proud of is the third voice. But again, and like I know you wanted to talk about a little bit about the characters, and I think we can go a little bit deeper into some of the side characters because I think they're one of the things that I really appreciate about this book too. And a lot of those, and that's another one of the reasons why I really wanted to work with Anthony on this, is because we both had two unique ways into the characters in this, in the sense that and there's just no way around me talking about this, but for activist related reasons, I spent time in prison, so a lot of these characters are real people that that I know from that situation. But Anthony also, because of his childhood and and what you had to deal with as a kid, I knew that you were going to bring characters or aspects to these people, and you can either talk about it or not, Anthony. But I thought that was something that I knew we both would have different aspects that we could bring to this, is people that we knew that seemed like they would inhabit this world, right?
Yeah, I don't like with the exception of Polk, I preferred to have there not be really any straight up villains. So it's important for me that every character every character you should feel empathetic towards them. You should understand them. They shouldn't feel like a caricature. And so that's why I reference Poke, because he is really the only one that kind of is what I
He's
would
kind of
call
our Elon Musk of this
yeah,
novel.
he's your
Right.
he's your stock primary like villain avatar, right? But for all like the other side characters, it was just really important for me that they be fully realized and that they not be just like, I'm trying to think of a good example, like a bad guy you would see on CSI, right?
Right.
Written by some 40-something-year-old white dude who's like never been outside his house.
Right.
Like that's what I was trying to avoid.
Yeah, and but some of the characters, um, like Mop and Bumblebee, and are real life people that I knew.
Right.
And
We probably talked to you probably mentioned one of them because we talked about people that you met in prison the first time we met. I don't know if it was in the actual interview, maybe after, but
right.
yeah.
Yeah, and they're Mop and Bumblebee, like and they're two kind of the gangster characters, but they're real life dudes, and not necessarily Mop wasn't exactly a person I really liked or had a good relationship with, but he was a person that I knew, and on the other sense, that though Bumblebee was somebody that was somebody I was pretty friendly with, and from the moment I met them, they were going to be characters in something.
Right.
They were very interesting people, and so, and I think they come off as, I hope they come off as being very real. And one of the cool things for me was seeing, and this is part of Anthony's skill, is that I knew Mop and Bumblebee, but when Anthony was writing scenes for Mop and Bumblebee, and I'm like, yep, got it, nailed it.
Yeah.
That was really cool because I just saw him getting it, and that was a neat thing to see.
They're very much the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern of this book.
So now
they were certainly my favorite to write for, honestly. They provide what is important to me in any book that has more like serious overtones, which is levity.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I think they really do function as the humor for the book.
Yeah, they were hilarious people, so they made hilarious characters too. So which is fun. And then but yeah, so, and then also I think Novak, who's our kind of like downtrodden cop character, Novak was very much Anthony's creation. And like a lot of times when we were outlining and sketching which chapters were going to be done by who, If it was a Novak chapter, it was Anthony's chapter, because he's a character that, and I think part of it was his single dadness, and something that something about that I felt like Anthony really he had a really good handle on Novak as a character, and every time he wrote him, I felt really good about it, and also like if there was a line of dialogue with Novak that I didn't feel comfortable with or that I wanted to change, I was always very nervous to do that, because it was so much of Anthony's creation, and I felt like he just really nailed that character. So if and when people read the book, I think they'll get a lot out of that character, because I think yeah, he's very, very, very rich character and very important to the story too.
Yeah, I loved him. I love the just like constantly disappointing his daughter, and the daughter knows all about it. It's just a day to day, right? He's a very real character.
Yeah, yeah, and we really needed to, because there is some mustache twirliness of the of the cult, and we knew that, and to ground this novel, a lot of it, and because of the science fictional aspects in it, the grounding of the characters was incredibly important, and the characters had to be real, and that's something that Anthony really hammered home from the beginning was, like because we would talk about it in shorthand a lot of times, and sometimes it would just be like, Anthony would roll his eyes at me if something of the characters doesn't seem real or whatever, and just be like, no, that we need to make them we need to make them focused and real and all that. So, I am interested though, since you guys have both read it, as an opportunity, Grant, starting maybe with Grant, but like I'm sure there's a bit of nervousness anytime you go into reading a book by somebody who you're friendly with and you're friends
absolutely.
with.
Absolutely.
You're like, oh God, please be good. Please be good.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, because what we're obviously trying to do here is get people to read the book and take a chance on it. We know there's a lot of media out there, and to get people's attention, to get their eyeballs on a book is hard enough.
Yeah. Right.
But, what was your experience reading this book, starting with Grant? Because, we're the authors of it, so of course we love it.
Yeah. Yeah, I did have that slight fear. I was like, man, I hope I don't hate this and, have to make up some reason why I can't blurb it. But I really enjoyed it. It was really fun. The opening, I feel like, is such a banger. But it speaks to a lot of my interests, like dreams and cults and the occult and magic and all that. It had all those elements. So you guys did amazing job with that, because I was like really on board after I read that. I said, oh shit, like this is gonna be good. But yeah, it's really good. I mean, kind of like my blurb, I do think great world building. I did think True Detective. I did think Black Mirror, kind of like a mash blend of the two, but unique in its own way. And kind of like you said, there's so much room for this world. There's so many stories you could tell. And it just has a nice balance of elements. Like, it is serious. There are some serious themes. There's humor. There's some spicy moments. So, I think a lot of people would enjoy it, even if you're not the stereotypical sci-fi fan, or, I think people should give it a chance. It's fun.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, I agree with everything he said. We're done. No, I mean, I guess you could say this is it's urban fantasy, right?
Yeah.
Fits the bill.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, kinda. I think it as like a genre mashup, because it's sci-fi, it's horror, it's and
crime.
I'm really grateful for what Grant just said. Grant, thank you so much.
No problem.
If my, like, the intent, at least for me going into it, was to make sure that it does feel like more of a blend of genres instead of just here's a straight up sci-fi novel, here's a straight up horror novel. So thank you for saying that, Grant. That means a lot.
Yeah. So it has a lot of the hallmarks, but I also tend not to like it too much when I see that subgenre in movies, or like Bright. I was like, oh man, there's like fucking 15 stories I want to see set in this world, and it's not this movie. But I'm really, really digging what's happening here.
Is it because deep down you knew it was
Setting-wise.
written by Max Landis?
It might have been that. It might have
Just
been that.
fucking with you.
It might have
That
been
does not help.
No, it definitely doesn't. But and I didn't have that here, and it's because it's something that I generally like. I have 2 works in progress that would fit the bill, but I tend not to enjoy it too much when I see it. But I really enjoyed it here, and I think it because it is, well, shit, Grant just said, sorry, what you said, Black Mirror, True Detective. And I think there's like The Wire is definitely there, just with this wide cross section of the population of the city that are all going to meet each other at some point. Everything from, beyond the main character, you have the genetically modified girl, you have the cop who's in the system, and he's doesn't have the best home life because he's fucking up with his daughter. And then you've got these guys who are gangsters that want the main character dead because of the past. And then you got kids disappearing, but then you've got it's just more and more. You got the reporter, you got the corporate people, right? Like there's this huge sort of world that's created, and a giant cross section where it's not just cops against genetically modified guys. No, it's this story within this big rich world that we're seeing a good cross section of in the novel. And I think that's what really makes it work.
Well, and we were trying to seed lots of stories, and that's the idea, right. But thank you guys. That does mean a lot to me. And Grant pointing out, like, he has no idea how hard we worked on that opening chapter.
Yeah, it's great.
Opening chapter was one we because that doesn't exist in the TV pilot.
That's what I was gonna say, because I've read the pilot, and then I'm like, okay, so opening up, take it and starting off Nightmare City, the book, and I'm like, holy shit, what the fuck is this? This is great.
Yeah, the pilot opens with them trying to rob what they think is the stash house, which I think is like chapter 2 or 3.
Right.
Like
yeah.
It's been a couple years since I read it, so yeah.
Right. And
I just remembered there wasn't really a cult in it.
Well, no, the cult was going to come into it later. See, that's the thing, is when we were developing it as a TV series, we were saving that as a reveal, which actually the reveal part is in the book. So just not it just we just opened with them. Yeah. But I think I like that. I think it was the right decision, story wise, but
for sure.
It is interesting and different, but we worked really hard on that opening chapter because we knew how important it was for laying the groundwork for I forgot, Des, that you read the pilot before reading the novels. So yeah,
but it's great. It helps the reader start everything is disoriented and what the fuck is going on, and that's also sort of what's going on with that character at the very beginning, and it's a really great opening to the book for sure.
Well, thank you. And so Nightmare City is available now. You can get it on Amazon, obviously. I think eventually, maybe in the early part of next year, we might do an event at Verbatim in San Diego and if people want to get signed books, they can contact us. Like Anthony and I don't live that far from each other, so we can sign books eventually for people if that's something that they really want. But really, honestly, like this is a 4-year labor of love, so it's something that we really hope people will check out. And I think that this book, if you take the time to sit down with it, you'll be rewarded with a story that is kind of fresh and original. We believe it is. But at the same time, we'll have hallmarks that you can feel comfortable with. Like, we wear our influences on our sleeves a little bit. And if you love early Clive Barker, I think this is something that you'll like.
I love early Clive Barker.
Right.
Same.
I think, that was one of the big influences on that. But, anyways, Anthony, is there anything that you want to say last?
No, I think you pretty much got it all squared away. If people are like, man, fuck Amazon, they can just hit me up. I'll have copies. It ain't no big deal. Like I'll have copies.
Yeah. And that's good. And people can find us online pretty easily.
Yes, David never leaves Facebook. And you can find me on Instagram because I very rarely use Facebook.
Well, right. And Grant, can you tell people about your new book before we go?
I'll do a brief plug just because obviously this is about your guys' book. But God's Leftovers, basically cannibal book, kind of like The Hills Have Eyes type of flavor. A group of people get stranded in the desert, get trapped with a group of hippie cannibals, and shit hits the fan. And similar to early Clive Barker, if you like that, and a little of surrealism sprinkled in, you'll probably love God's Leftovers. So it's on Amazon and wherever else books are sold. So it's pretty dope, pretty violent.
It's definitely on my list. I'll be getting it soon. Des, you have a podcast that comes out every week. You have how many episodes now?
I don't know. I try and blank it out because it kind of drives me crazy, and I actually can't think. It's 796 came out this past Monday. So
wow.
I'm a month away from 800 straight weeks of Dread Media. So you can find it at dreadmedia.com. All of the podcatchers. I'm on the social medias as Dread Media. And I have a debut novel, which is Mother of Abominations. And it's full of like espionage, intrigue, like military action and giant kaiju fights. So if that sounds up your alley, then what did I say? I said it was like The Devil's Own meets Aleister Crowley, and throw the Loch Ness Monster in, and that's the book. Yeah, that's that. And apparently I have a book. If anybody wants to publish a dark superhero pastiche that asks the question, what would it really be like if a teen sidekick grew up as a killing machine and then left the superhero that was responsible for it all?
That book is awesome. I've read it.
That does sound good.
It is.
Thank you.
It is really good. It's the Dark Robin origin story you didn't know you needed. Yeah, great stuff, and it's very for people who like the urban set stories. I think it'll work for that too. So
thanks. Yes, let's stop talking about it. This is embarrassing. I need to get it published.
Somebody else, you never know who's gonna be out there listening, right? So
please.
On that note, I will be talking to everybody again, I'm sure. But Nightmare City is out there, and I really appreciate you guys coming and talking to me and Anthony about this, because we're just really stoked to have it out in the world. And
I'm glad I don't have to only talk to David about it. Thank you.
True.
Buy Nightmare City, man. Buy Nightmare City.
All right. And thanks for joining us, everybody. Buy Nightmare City, and maybe we'll talk again soon. Bye.